Welcome to our channel. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more stories. In 1993, Mogadishu, Somalia's capital, was a city of crumbling buildings and makeshift shelters, home to about 600,000 people. On October 3rd, an estimated 12,000 of them took up arms against 160 U.S. soldiers. The resulting 18-hour battle left 18 Americans and hundreds, possibly thousands, of Somalis dead. These staggering numbers tell only part of the story. Behind them lies a complex web of geopolitics, military strategy, and human drama that we're about to uncover in unprecedented detail. In the early 1990s, Somalia descended into chaos following the fall of dictator Siad Barre in 1991. The collapse of the central government left a power vacuum that various warlords and clan leaders rushed to fill, fracturing the country into a patchwork of warring territories. Somalia's clan system, which forms the backbone of its social and political structure, played a significant role in this conflict. The disintegration of state authority plunged Somalia into a humanitarian crisis of staggering proportions. Widespread famine gripped the population, exacerbated by ongoing violence and the breakdown of essential services. Agricultural production ground to a halt as farmers abandoned their fields, fleeing the conflict. Urban centers devolved into battlegrounds where rival factions fought for control of dwindling resources. In response to the dire situation, the United Nations launched initiatives to provide humanitarian aid. However, these efforts met fierce resistance from local warlords, who saw the influx of international assistance as a threat to their power. Mohammed Farah Aidid, a former general in Siad Barre's army and leader of the United Somali Congress, emerged as a particularly formidable opponent to relief operations. Aidid's militia controlled significant portions of Mogadishu and key supply routes throughout southern Somalia, routinely intercepting aid shipments. As the crisis worsened, the UN Security Council passed Resolution 794 in December 1992, authorizing the use of all necessary means to establish a secure environment for humanitarian relief operations. This paved the way for Operation Restore Hope, a United States-led, UN-sanctioned military intervention that began on December 9, 1992, with the arrival of U.S. Marines in Mogadishu. The initial force, comprised of approximately 25,000 U.S. troops and 17,000 UNITAF personnel from over 20 countries, faced the daunting task of securing aid distribution points and establishing order. While many Somalis welcomed the intervention, others viewed it with suspicion and hostility. Warlords like Aidid saw the foreign presence as a direct challenge to their authority. As Operation Restore Hope unfolded, it became clear that the mission's scope would need to expand beyond its initial humanitarian focus. U.S. and UN forces found themselves drawn into the intricate politics of Somali clan warfare, often struggling to distinguish between combatants and civilians in Mogadishu's labyrinthine streets. By 1993, despite some initial successes in curbing famine and establishing secure aid distribution channels, the underlying tensions continued to simmer. The mission's focus began to shift towards disarmament of the various factions and efforts to broker a lasting political settlement. This evolution of objectives would ultimately lead to a series of confrontations between UN forces and Somali militias, particularly those loyal to Aidid, setting the stage for a dramatic escalation of violence in the months to come. As tensions in Mogadishu reached a boiling point, the United States deployed Task Force Ranger, an elite unit representing the pinnacle of American military prowess. This carefully assembled team drew strength from various special operations units, each bringing unique capabilities. The 75th Ranger Regiment provided exceptional light infantry skills and rapid deployment capabilities, while Delta Force contributed unparalleled expertise in close-quarters combat. The Night Stalkers of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment brought their mastery of low-altitude, high-speed maneuvers, crucial for navigating Mogadishu's urban maze. At the helm stood Major General William F. Garrison, a seasoned commander with a reputation for leading high-stakes operations. Task Force Rangers' intelligence gathering relied heavily on local informants who kept watch on Aidid's senior advisors. These sources provided a steady stream of information, allowing the Americans to build a comprehensive picture of the Somali National Alliance's leadership structure and habits. However, this reliance on human intelligence came with inherent risks, including the potential for misinformation. As the task force settled into their base, they began conducting raids aimed at dismantling AIDID's power structure. These operations targeted key figures in the SNA, which held sway over much of the city. The task force's initial forays into Mogadishu's chaotic streets met with considerable success, bolstering their confidence and honing their tactics. The repeated nature of these operations inadvertently provided AIDID's militia with a dangerous opportunity. With each raid, the Somali fighters gained valuable insights into American tactics, techniques, and procedures. This accumulation of knowledge would prove critical in the events about to unfold. On October 3, 1993, intelligence reached Task Force Ranger about a gathering of AIDID's top lieutenants near the Olympic Hotel. The opportunity to capture multiple high-value targets was compelling. Garrison and his staff quickly formulated a plan to strike, confident in their ability to execute another successful raid. The operation would follow a now familiar pattern. MH-60 Black Hawk helicopters would insert assault teams directly onto the target building using fast roping techniques. This method allowed for rapid deployment in areas where landing zones were scarce, a common challenge in Mogadishu's densely populated landscape. As the task force prepared, there was a sense of routine. The soldiers went through their pre-mission rituals, checking equipment and reviewing plans. Few suspected that this particular raid would differ from previous successes. Unbeknownst to the Americans, the SNA had developed a rapid mobilization system that could quickly flood the streets with armed fighters in response to any incursion. This capability would dramatically alter the dynamics of the upcoming operation in ways Task Force Ranger could not have anticipated. As the afternoon of October 3rd wore on, the soldiers made their final preparations. The mood was one of focused determination, tinged with the confidence that comes from repeated success. As the afternoon sun beat down on Mogadishu's war-torn streets, Task Force Ranger prepared for what seemed like another routine operation. Little did they know that their next 30 minutes would stretch into 18 hours of hell, forever changing the face of modern urban warfare. The target was the Olympic Hotel, an unremarkable building nestled in the heart of Mogadishu's densely populated Bakara market area. Intelligence had pinpointed this location as the site of a crucial meeting between two of AIDID's top lieutenants. For Task Force Ranger, this presented a golden opportunity to strike at the heart of the Somali National Alliance's leadership structure. The plan relied on the task force's proven tactics of speed and surprise. Delta Force operators would spearhead the assault, utilizing MH-6 Little Bird helicopters for insertion. Army Rangers would fast rope from MH-60 Black Hawks, establishing a defensive perimeter around the target building. The ground convoy would approach through predetermined routes, ready for extraction once the objectives were secured. As the soldiers made their final preparations, a mix of emotions coursed through their veins. Confidence, born from previous successes, mingled with the ever-present undercurrent of tension that precedes combat. Some found solace in routine tasks, checking equipment, reviewing plans, while others engaged in quiet conversation or moments of introspection. However, beneath the surface of this well-oiled military machine, unseen factors were aligning against the American forces. The Somali National Alliance had established a sophisticated radio network throughout South Mogadishu, dividing the city into military sectors for rapid mobilization. This development, unknown to Task Force Ranger, would soon prove critical. As the clock ticked towards 3:42 p.m., the assault force and ground convoy prepared to launch from their base. The air thrummed with the sound of helicopter rotors and vehicle engines. The entire operation was expected to last no more than 30 minutes, a quick in-and-out mission that would deal a significant blow to AIDID's command structure. The moment of truth arrived as the first helicopters lifted off. As they approached the Olympic Hotel, the element of surprise seemed to be on their side. The streets below appeared relatively calm, with no immediate signs of resistance. In a display of precision, The MH-6 Little Birds swooped low over the target building. Delta operators smoothly transitioned from the helicopters to the structure. Simultaneously, Army Rangers began their descent from the Black Hawks, fast roping into predetermined positions around the perimeter. The initial phase of the operation unfolded with efficiency. The assault team swiftly secured the target building, moving room to room. Within minutes, they had located and apprehended several high-value targets, including the two lieutenants who had been the primary focus of the mission. As the Delta operators prepared their captives for extraction, the Rangers outside established a tight defensive cordon. From their positions, they scanned the surrounding streets and rooftops, alert for any sign of an impending counterattack. Yet, unbeknownst to the American forces, a storm of resistance was brewing in the Warren-like streets of Mogadishu. The SNA's radio network crackled with activity as militia members mobilized, converging on the Bakara market area from all directions. The streets of Mogadishu erupted into chaos as Task Force Rangers' initial success gave way to a shocking turn of events. The American forces had swiftly secured their targets, but their moment of triumph was short-lived. Within minutes, the city's intricate network of alleys and thoroughfares became a battleground filled with armed Somali militia members. The speed and coordination of the Somali response caught Task Force Ranger off guard. As the first helicopters touched down, militia fighters sprang into action, employing a sophisticated communication system that belied their supposed lack of organization. Cell phones buzzed with activity, and plumes of black smoke rose from burning tires, serving as beacons to rally fighters from across the city. The initial moments of contact with Somali fighters were intense and disorienting. Sergeant John Miller, a member of the ground convoy, later recounted, "One second, we were rolling through eerily quiet streets. The next, it was like the whole city exploded around us. Gunfire came from every direction, and we could barely see through the smoke and dust." Between 2,000 to 4,000 battle-hardened clan fighters descended upon the operation area almost immediately. These weren't untrained civilians hastily armed for the occasion, but experienced combatants who had honed their skills through years of civil conflict. As the ground convoy attempted to navigate the city's labyrinthine streets, they encountered a series of well-planned obstacles. The road network became a treacherous gauntlet. Improvised roadblocks sprang up seemingly out of nowhere, channeling the American vehicles into pre-planned ambush sites. The Somali militia's tactics differed significantly from what the Americans expected. Instead of engaging in direct confrontations, they used the urban terrain to their advantage. Fighters would emerge from alleyways, fire a burst of rounds, or launch an RPG, and then disappear back into the maze of buildings. The air filled with the cacophony of small arms fire as the Somali militia unleashed their arsenal. Rounds came from multiple directions, creating a 360-degree kill zone that left the American forces reeling. The chaotic environment that ensued was unlike anything Task Force Ranger had prepared for in their training or previous operations. As the convoy attempted to navigate through Mogadishu's maze-like streets, they often found themselves passing within mere blocks of the operation's objectives without realizing it. The combination of heavy fire, billowing smoke, and the city's disorienting layout created a fog of war that even the most advanced military technology struggled to penetrate. The Somali National Alliance, SNA, fighters, while lacking in advanced weaponry, made effective use of their arsenal. Armed primarily with AK-47 assault rifles and RPG-7 rocket-propelled grenade launchers, they employed hit-and-run tactics that maximized the impact of their light infantry weapons. These arms proved devastatingly effective in the close quarters of urban combat. As the battle unfolded, it became clear that the SNA had learned valuable lessons from previous encounters with American forces. They had adapted their strategies to counter the U.S. military's reliance on speed and air support, turning the urban environment into a weapon in its own right. The 30-minute operation that Task Force Ranger had envisioned now stretched into an indefinite timeline. The American forces found themselves in a situation they hadn't fully prepared for, facing an enemy that was more numerous, better organized, and more tactically adept than they had anticipated. The streets of Mogadishu had already erupted into chaos, but fate was about to deal Task Force Ranger an even crueler hand. As the American forces grappled with unexpected resistance, a single moment in the air above the city would transform their mission from a challenging operation into a desperate fight for survival. At 4:15 p.m., the air support helicopter Super 61, an MH-60 Black Hawk, was struck by an RPG-7 rocket-propelled grenade. The impact was catastrophic, hitting the helicopter's tail rotor and sending it into an uncontrollable spin. As the aircraft spiraled downward, the crew fought desperately to maintain control, but their efforts were in vain. Super 61 crashed into a residential area several blocks from the Olympic Hotel, the operation's primary target. The consequences of the crash were immediate and severe. Both pilots perished on impact, while 2 crew members suffered grave injuries. 2 snipers aboard the helicopter survived relatively unscathed and swiftly established a defensive perimeter around the crash site. The downed Black Hawk quickly became a focal point for Somali militia forces. Word of the crash spread rapidly through the sophisticated communication network established by the Somali National Alliance throughout South Mogadishu. Militia members converged on the crash site with alarming speed, transforming it into a vulnerable position that needed to be defended at all costs. Task Force Ranger immediately initiated its downed aircraft procedures, designed to prevent enemy forces from overrunning crash sites. These protocols called for immediate air support and rapid deployment of ground forces to secure the area. A combat search and rescue team was quickly dispatched from another Black Hawk helicopter to recover survivors and establish a defensive position. The crash of Super 61 marked a critical juncture, fundamentally altering the operation's trajectory. What had begun as a targeted capture mission now morphed into a multi-objective rescue operation. The American forces found themselves stretched thin, forced to defend multiple positions in an unforgiving urban environment. The original objective, apprehending Aided's lieutenants, now competed for resources with the imperative to secure the crash site and extract the survivors. This sudden shift in priorities exposed the limitations of Task Force Ranger's initial planning. The operation, which was supposed to be an easy grab-and-go, now faced an indefinite timeline. The American forces, highly trained but lightly equipped, were ill-prepared for a prolonged engagement in Mogadishu's labyrinthine streets. The urban terrain presented a formidable challenge. Mogadishu's network of narrow alleys, crumbling buildings, and improvised roadblocks favored the defenders. The Somali National Alliance had established a series of ambush points and defensive positions throughout the area, allowing them to mount sustained attacks on the American forces, who now found themselves fighting on multiple fronts. As the situation deteriorated, the complexities of urban warfare came into sharp focus. The dense civilian population complicated target identification, while the close-quarters combat nullified the effectiveness of long-range weapons and air support. Each street corner, rooftop, and window potentially concealed an enemy fighter, creating a 360-degree threat environment that taxed even the most experienced soldiers. As Super 61's downing reverberated through military circles, a more immediate drama unfolded at the crash site. Approximately 90 Rangers and Delta Force operators found themselves in a desperate defense against an overwhelming Somali militia. The downed Black Hawk had transformed Mogadishu's urban sprawl into an impromptu battleground. The defenders occupied 4 houses along Freedom Road, turning them into makeshift fortresses. They used available materials to reinforce windows and doors, creating firing positions and establishing clear fields of fire. Colonel Sharif Hassan Jumale, the Somali commander, ordered his forces to encircle the crash site, deploying about 360 militiamen, augmented by hundreds of irregulars and volunteers. As night fell, the situation grew more perilous. The cover of darkness brought renewed assaults from the Somali militia. In this moment of crisis, AH-6 Little Birds arrived, conducting non-stop gun runs. These aerial guardians pushed back the advancing militia, providing a lifeline to the beleaguered forces on the ground. Throughout the night, the Little Birds maintained their vigil, striking at the encroaching Somali forces. This air support proved invaluable, allowing the defenders to hold their ground against repeated assaults. The coordinated efforts of the ground forces and Little Birds created a synergy that kept the militia at bay, despite the overwhelming numerical advantage they held. The actions of the defenders exemplified the Ranger creed: never leave a fallen comrade. This principle took on new meaning as they fought not only for their own survival, but also to protect the bodies of their fallen brothers in arms. The crash site became hallowed ground, a place where American resolve would be tested against the harsh realities of urban warfare. As dawn approached, the toll of the prolonged engagement became increasingly apparent. The defenders had suffered mounting casualties, yet they continued to fight with unwavering determination. Their heroic stand bought critical time for rescue efforts to mobilize, even as it extracted a heavy price in blood and suffering. The battle at the crash site of Super 6-1 became a testament to the resilience and tactical skill of the American forces. Despite facing an enemy that outnumbered them many times over, the Rangers and Delta operators managed to hold their ground. Their ability to repel repeated assaults under such adverse conditions spoke volumes about their training, equipment, and sheer force of will. As the defenders at Super 6-1's crash site fought valiantly, fate was about to test Task Force Rangers' resolve even further. The skies over Mogadishu held no mercy that day, and the next few minutes would reshape the entire operation, pushing these elite soldiers to their limits. While the battle raged around the first downed Black Hawk, Super 6-4 continued its mission overhead. The crew, consisting of Chief Warrant Officer Michael Durant as pilot, Chief Warrant Officer Raymond Frank as co-pilot, and Sergeants William Cleveland and Thomas Field as crew chiefs, provided crucial air support and situational awareness. At 4:49 p.m., just over half an hour after Super 6-1's crash, disaster struck again. An RPG found its mark on Super 6-4, causing the helicopter to lose control and crash approximately 7 blocks south of the Olympic Hotel. The downing of a second Black Hawk sent shockwaves through the American forces, making the tactical situation exponentially more complex. Task Force Ranger now had 3 separate locations to defend and extract from: the original target area, Super 6-1's crash site, and Super 6-4's wreckage. Each position was vulnerable, surrounded by an ever-growing number of Somali fighters. In this crisis, 2 Delta Force operators, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randy Shugart, volunteered for a perilous mission. They requested to be inserted at Super 6-4's crash site to protect the survivors, knowing no immediate ground rescue was possible. Their request was initially denied, but as it became clear no other options were available, Gordon and Shugart's appeals were granted. This decision underscored the brotherhood among special operators, a bond that often transcends self-preservation. The 2 Delta snipers were inserted near the crash site, immediately engaging the Somali fighters converging on the downed helicopter. Their expert marksmanship and tactical prowess kept the enemy at bay, buying precious time for the injured crew members. As the battle raged on, Gordon and Shugart were eventually overwhelmed by the sheer number of Somali fighters. They fought to the last, embodying the highest ideals of their training and commitment. In the chaos, Chief Warrant Officer Michael Durant was captured by Somali forces, adding another layer of complexity to the situation. The downing of Super 6-4 and Gordon and Shugart's actions laid bare the unpredictable nature of urban warfare. In Mogadishu's narrow streets, carefully crafted plans could unravel in moments. The bravery displayed by these 2 Delta operators would later be recognized with the posthumous awarding of the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration for valor in combat. As chaos engulfed the crash sites, Task Force Ranger faced an unprecedented challenge that pushed their tactical abilities to the limit. The solution appeared straightforward: deploy a ground convoy to extract the wounded and stranded personnel. However, this rescue mission rapidly devolved into a harrowing journey through enemy territory. Lieutenant Colonel Danny McKnight took command of the convoy, a formidable assembly of approximately 12 vehicles. The rescue force comprised 9 Humvees and 3 M939 trucks, a mix of firepower and transport capacity that should have been sufficient under normal circumstances. Yet, The streets of Mogadishu proved far more treacherous than anticipated. The convoy embarked on its mission, thrust into an urban landscape transformed into a war zone. Narrow streets, once teeming with civilian life, now presented a gauntlet of deadly obstacles. Barricades of rocks, wreckage, and burning tires choked the thoroughfares, impeding progress at every turn. These roadblocks served to hinder American forces and funnel them into pre-planned kill zones. The urban terrain became a labyrinth of danger and confusion, with visibility severely compromised. A thick pall of dust hung in the air, stirred up by constant movement. Acrid smoke from burning tires further obscured vision. As the convoy pushed deeper into the city, familiar landmarks became unrecognizable in the fog of war. The convoy's struggles intensified under relentless assault from Somali militia. Small arms fire peppered the vehicles from multiple directions, the staccato of AK-47s punctuated by the thuds of RPG launches. The American forces found themselves in a 360-degree kill zone, with threats materializing from windows, rooftops, and alleyways. Hours dragged on, and the toll mounted. Vehicles sustained damage, forcing hasty transfers of wounded personnel and equipment. The constant combat and stress of navigating the hostile environment wore heavily on the soldiers. Many sustained injuries, ranging from minor wounds to life-threatening trauma. The inability to locate the crash sites added frustration and despair to the dire situation. As the convoy circled and backtracked, precious time slipped away. Each delay increased the risk for those stranded and diminished chances of a successful extraction. The rescue mission rapidly transformed into a fight for survival for the convoy itself. After hours of intense combat and fruitless searching, the painful decision was made to return to base. The convoy, battered and bloodied, abandoned its primary objective. As they limped back to their compound, the true cost of the failed mission became apparent. 8 soldiers were dead or near death upon return, with roughly half of the convoy's personnel injured to varying degrees. The return of the convoy without the rescued personnel dealt a crushing blow to Task Force Ranger. Those left behind at the crash sites now faced prolonged isolation in hostile territory. The defenders, who had fought valiantly in hope of imminent rescue, now had to dig in for a longer siege with dwindling resources and mounting casualties. As darkness descended upon Mogadishu, the scattered American forces faced a new and treacherous phase of the battle. The urban landscape transformed into an even more perilous battleground as shadows lengthened and visibility diminished. The Somali militia, emboldened by their earlier successes and familiar with the city's layout, intensified their attacks. They moved with confidence, using the night to conceal their movements and launch assaults from unexpected quarters. The American forces, spread across multiple defensive positions, encountered relentless pressure as the militia probed for weaknesses. Ammunition, already scarce, became precious as the hours wore on. Each shot had to count, each magazine conserved, as resupply remained uncertain. Mounting casualties added complexity, as tending to the wounded competed with maintaining an effective defense. Despite these challenges, the American forces demonstrated remarkable resilience. Their advanced technology provided a critical edge in the darkness. Night vision equipment allowed defenders to maintain situational awareness and respond to threats invisible to the naked eye. Soldiers used thermal imaging scopes to detect heat signatures of approaching militia, while night vision goggles enabled precise movement and target acquisition in the pitch-black alleyways. The skies above Mogadishu became a theater of their own. Little bird helicopters, piloted by skilled aviators of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, played a pivotal role. These agile aircraft conducted relentless gun runs, providing close air support in the confined urban environment. The sound of their rotors and weapon flashes became a lifeline for the defenders. As the conflict stretched on, the Somali militia's tactics evolved. They utilized the complex network of alleyways and buildings to maneuver unseen, making it difficult for American forces to pinpoint their locations. The militia employed hit-and-run tactics, striking quickly before melting back into the darkness. They used the cover of night to set up ambush positions, laying in wait for American patrols or attempting to infiltrate defensive perimeters. The prolonged nighttime combat took a significant toll on the soldiers. The stress of isolation and constant threat in a hostile environment pushed many to the brink of exhaustion. The psychological impact of fighting an unseen enemy in unfamiliar terrain was profound. Soldiers struggled with heightened anxiety and paranoia, every shadow potentially concealing a threat. The darkness amplified sounds, making it difficult to distinguish between real dangers and imagined threats. Throughout the night, American forces demonstrated remarkable adaptability. They constantly adjusted their tactics, communicating effectively and coordinating their defense across isolated positions. The training that had prepared them for high-intensity combat was put to the ultimate test. Split-second decisions were made in an environment where the margin for error was non-existent. Acts of individual heroism and collective resolve became commonplace. Soldiers drew strength from their training, their comrades, and their unwavering commitment to leave no one behind. As the night wore on, the defenders' resolve was tested time and again, yet they continued to hold their positions against seemingly insurmountable odds. As dawn approached, the American forces confronted a harrowing challenge that would test their resolve to its limits. The prolonged battle had exacted a heavy toll, leaving soldiers physically and mentally exhausted. With vehicles either destroyed or filled with wounded comrades, many faced a grim reality. Escape would require traversing enemy-held streets on foot. The plan that emerged was both daring and desperate. The remaining forces would attempt to evacuate through hostile territory, covering over a mile to reach the UN-controlled zone. This perilous journey became known as the Mogadishu Mile, a testament to the soldiers' indomitable spirit. As the convoy began its retreat, the true magnitude of the situation became apparent. Mogadishu's streets had transformed into a lethal maze of danger and uncertainty. Soldiers navigated through a gauntlet of enemy fire, their path obstructed by urban warfare debris and the omnipresent threat of Somali militia. The physical demands of this escape were staggering. Soldiers, already pushed to their limits, now faced the daunting task of running through hostile territory while carrying wounded comrades. The weight of their equipment, combined with oppressive heat and constant enemy fire, created an almost insurmountable challenge. In the face of overwhelming odds, the true mettle of the American forces was revealed. Acts of heroism became commonplace as soldiers refused to abandon their comrades. The bonds forged through shared adversity manifested in extraordinary displays of courage and selflessness. The Mogadishu Mile evolved into a powerful symbol of determination and brotherhood. Soldiers who had fought side by side through the night now relied on each other for survival in the harsh light of day. The camaraderie that had sustained them through the darkest hours now propelled them forward, step by agonizing step. The urban environment presented unique tactical challenges. Narrow streets and blind corners provided perfect ambush points for the enemy. The American forces had to adapt quickly, using suppressive fire and smoke grenades to cover their movement and create temporary safe corridors for evacuation. However, the harsh realities of combat meant that not everyone could be saved. In the chaos of the retreat, some soldiers were left behind, leading to further rescue efforts that extended the operation and highlighted the vulnerabilities of the American forces. As the soldiers pressed on, the Mogadishu Mile revealed both the strengths and weaknesses of the American forces. Their training and resilience allowed them to persevere through seemingly impossible circumstances. Yet, the operation also exposed the limitations of their equipment and tactics in the face of an enemy intimately familiar with the urban terrain. As more soldiers reached the safety of the UN-controlled zone, the true impact of the Mogadishu Mile began to sink in. The physical toll was evident in their exhausted faces and battered bodies, but the psychological impact would take far longer to fully comprehend. Many would carry the memories of this desperate escape with them for the rest of their lives, a testament to the extreme conditions they had endured and overcome. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon on October 4th, 1993, the full extent of the Battle of Mogadishu began to emerge. What had started as a routine operation to capture high-ranking members of the Somali National Alliance had transformed into one of the most intense urban conflicts in recent military history. The streets of Mogadishu, still echoing with the remnants of gunfire and chaos, bore witness to a confrontation that would reshape American foreign policy and military doctrine for years to come. The immediate aftermath revealed a staggering toll. 18 American soldiers had lost their lives in the unforgiving streets of Mogadishu, with an additional 73 wounded. The recovery of casualties proved challenging, with some bodies initially left behind in the chaotic withdrawal. Task Force Ranger, supported by UN forces, conducted a complex extraction operation to recover the fallen. Somali casualties, both militia and civilians, presented a far more complex picture, with estimates ranging from hundreds to potentially thousands. As news of the battle reached American shores, the public reaction was one of shock and outrage. Graphic images of dead American soldiers being dragged through Mogadishu's streets by jubilant Somali crowds struck at the heart of American pride. These images, broadcast worldwide, forced both the military and the public to confront uncomfortable truths about modern warfare and the limits of American power projection. The international media response was swift and intense. News outlets across the globe provided extensive coverage, with many questioning the wisdom of U.S. involvement in Somalia. The battle became a focal point for debates on humanitarian intervention and the role of Western powers in post-colonial conflicts. Key military and political figures reacted strongly to the battle's outcome. Defense Secretary Les Aspin faced harsh criticism for his decision to deny requests for additional armored support, eventually leading to his resignation. President Bill Clinton, responding to mounting pressure, ordered a halt to combat operations against the Somali National Alliance, except in self-defense. The political fallout was far-reaching. The U.S. approach to the Somalia crisis pivoted away from military intervention towards a more diplomatic stance. This shift culminated in the complete withdrawal of U.S. forces from Somalia by March 1994, effectively ending American involvement in the peacekeeping mission. The Battle of Mogadishu became a watershed moment in U.S. foreign policy, particularly concerning humanitarian interventions. The incident gave rise to the Somalia syndrome, influencing decision-making in subsequent crises, notably evident in the U.S. response to the Rwandan genocide in 1994. For the military, the battle prompted a comprehensive reevaluation of tactics, equipment, and training for urban warfare scenarios. The experience underscored the need for better coordination between ground and air forces, improved communication systems, and more robust armored vehicles. The battle's legacy continues to influence military doctrine, serving as a case study in the complexities of combat operations in densely populated areas. The Battle of Mogadishu exposed critical flaws in military doctrine, prompting a profound reevaluation of urban warfare strategies. The U.S. Armed Forces embarked on a journey to transform these painful lessons into a new paradigm for urban combat, reshaping modern warfare for decades to come. In the aftermath, the military recognized the urgent need for a comprehensive overhaul of its urban warfare capabilities. The operation revealed deficiencies in equipment, tactics, and training ill-suited for city combat complexities. A significant realization was the necessity for combined arms systems in urban operations, highlighting the importance of adaptability and preparedness for worst-case scenarios. The denial of Task Force Rangers' requests for tanks and armored vehicles became a focal point of post-battle analysis. Lieutenant Gen. Thomas Montgomery, deputy commander of UN forces in Somalia, later stated, "We needed armor. It would have made a significant difference." This led to a renewed emphasis on integrating heavy armor in urban combat scenarios. Intelligence preparation emerged as a critical area for improvement. Colonel Lawrence Casper, commander of the 10th Mountain Division's Aviation Brigade, noted, "Our maps were useless. The city had changed dramatically since they were made." This spurred the development of more dynamic intelligence gathering methods and real-time data integration into operational planning. The importance of adaptable contingency plans became evident. Military planners began emphasizing flexible, multi-tiered plans that could be rapidly implemented as situations evolved. Regular reevaluation and rehearsal became standard practice, ensuring forces could swiftly adapt to changing circumstances. The high casualty rate underscored the importance of medical training for all soldiers. the U.S. military began emphasizing tactical combat casualty care as an essential skill for every soldier, aiming to increase survivability in environments where immediate evacuation might not be possible. The complex interaction between combatants and civilians led to the development of non-lethal defense and crowd control means. Gen. Charles Krulak, former commandant of the Marine Corps, emphasized, in urban warfare, the line between combatant and non-combatant is often blurred. We need to train our forces to make split-second decisions in these complex environments. These lessons were applied in subsequent conflicts, most notably in Iraq and Afghanistan. During the 2004 Battle of Fallujah, U.S. forces employed heavy armor, improved close air support tactics, and more comprehensive intelligence gathering. Lieutenant General James Conway, who commanded the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force in Iraq, stated, "We learned from Mogadishu. In Fallujah, we had better equipment, better tactics, and a better understanding of the urban battlefield." The Battle of Mogadishu's legacy continues to shape modern military doctrine, serving as a reminder of urban warfare's complexities. Military strategists now approach urban operations with a more comprehensive understanding of city environments' unique challenges. Training exercises incorporate realistic urban scenarios, simulating the chaos and rapidly changing conditions of modern urban combat. As the dust settled on the streets of Mogadishu, Somalia faced a crucible of chaos that would shape its destiny for decades to come. Withdrawal, in the wake of the Battle of Mogadishu, left a power vacuum that various factions rushed to fill, setting the stage for a prolonged period of instability and conflict. The absence of a strong central government allowed warlords and extremist groups to vie for control, plunging the nation into a cycle of violence that proved difficult to break. In the years following 1993, Somalia became a breeding ground for extremist ideologies. The rise of al-Shabaab, an Islamic militant group, can be traced back to this tumultuous period. Emerging in the mid-2000s, al-Shabaab capitalized on the widespread disillusionment with the transitional government and the ongoing chaos in the country. The group's ability to exploit local grievances and the lack of effective governance allowed it to gain a foothold in many parts of Somalia, particularly in the south. International efforts to stabilize Somalia have been numerous and complex. The African Union has played a crucial role in these endeavors, deploying troops to combat al-Shabaab and assist in rebuilding the Somali National Army. The African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM, has been instrumental in pushing back against extremist forces and supporting the fledgling Somali government. However, these efforts have been fraught with challenges, as the memory of the Battle of Mogadishu continues to influence international approaches to intervention in the region. Despite some progress in establishing a federal government and improving security in certain areas, Somalia continues to grapple with significant challenges. Ongoing violence, poverty, and humanitarian crises persist, exacerbated by climate change and recurrent droughts. The country's struggles highlight the complexities of nation-building and peacekeeping in a region marked by decades of conflict and instability. The events of 1993 have cast a long shadow over U.S. military involvement in Somalia. In the aftermath of the battle, there has been a shift towards diplomatic solutions over direct military engagement in subsequent conflicts. This change in approach reflects a broader reassessment of the risks and complexities involved in foreign interventions, particularly in regions with deep-seated political and social divisions. The international community's efforts to support stability in Somalia have been informed by the lessons learned from past mistakes. Experts emphasize the need for a comprehensive approach that addresses not only security concerns, but also the underlying social, economic, and political issues that fuel conflict. This holistic strategy recognizes that military solutions alone are insufficient to bring about lasting peace and stability in the region. The ongoing struggles in Somalia serve as a stark reminder of the challenges inherent in rebuilding a fractured nation. The absence of a strong central government for many years allowed various factions to establish their own power bases, making the task of national reconciliation and reconstruction all the more daunting. The rise of al-Shabaab and other extremist groups has further complicated efforts to establish a stable and functioning state. The Battle of Mogadishu's 18-hour ordeal left an indelible mark on military history, reshaping U.S. foreign policy and contributing to the Somalia syndrome. The staggering human cost, with casualties ranging from 133 to 700 Somalis, underscored urban warfare's devastating impact. This pivotal event exposed the complexities of urban combat, leading to substantial changes in U.S. military doctrine. The battle's legacy continues to influence strategic thinking, emphasizing adaptable tactics, improved intelligence, and enhanced inter-service cooperation. As we reflect on the courage and sacrifice displayed in Mogadishu, we're reminded of conflict's profound human toll and the enduring lessons it imparts on military operations and foreign policy decisions.